Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Heretic Hammer Podcast. I am your host, Marshall, and this is my co-host, Dylan.
Hello.
And today, we're getting into a topic that, and I kind of prepped you on this aspect before we started recording, which was that, I knew it was going to be short, and I knew that there wasn't going to be a crazy amount of resources unless I did, we were going to go into crazy deep dives and especially games, like getting really into tabletop history stuff. I was I'm like, we're not doing that. That's not what this podcast is about, first of all. But second of all, we're lore first, gaming second, kind of, it's kind of the shtick here. And so I was like, that'd be a lot, and then when I kept debating these episodes, I had always thought maybe, I do more than one of these in an episode. And, this week I was like, you know what? I think it's good sometimes just to have a shorter episode.
Sure.
So for today's topic, it is going to be lore though today at least, but we are going to discuss one of the great and many, I guess regiments isn't necessarily the right term, but they are regiments, but from a planet of the Imperial Guard today. So all those various, because we talked in the Imperial Guard episode about how most of the time you see Cadians, but there are so many out there. We're going to talk about one of those today. One of the most well-known ones other than Cadia.
And that one is?
I'll give it to you. I don't do this often, but I liked this. This is a quote from their own Army 212 Chief of Staff, Garan Ohan, which to describe them. They may spend every off-duty minute polishing their shiny boots and marching up and down the parade ground in perfect formation. But don't let that fool you. These men are steel-eyed, cold-blooded killers, and I'd as soon have a platoon of them in my force as I would a company of other troops. Today we are talking about the Mordian Iron Guard.
Mordian.
Yes.
That was a D?
Yes.
Gotcha.
They're not getting morbed. They're not Morbians.
Oh, we're not morbing up today?
No. The Mordians are known for three things: ruthlessness, fancy uniforms, and the Mordian Glory YouTube channel.
I would love if that was just in the lore books published by Games Workshop.
I mean, it might as well be at this point. That man is carrying the. I mean, I can't say I can't say that there are no fans, but he's definitely he's the spearhead, because he's got a good YouTube channel. He's got a lot of followers, and obviously based on his name, big on the Mordian Iron Guard. So
if there are 10 Mordian fans, I'm one of them. If there are 0 Mordian fans, it means I've died.
Yes, exactly. The second time today I've heard that bit. Funny enough,
it's an evergreen meme.
It really is. It works so well for so many things. But yes, today I want to talk about. We're gonna, we're moving away from Cadians. It's the Mordian Iron Guard, and honestly, to me, the most unique and interesting things with Mordians is actually the planet of Mordian. Which also funny enough to me is that the planet isn't called Mordia. It is Mordian.
I was going to say, it's interesting that it is just Mordian. Yep.
Yeah. But the planet Mordian is tidally locked. Thus, the time of the planet's rotation is equal to the time of its revolution around the sun. Wild. So consequently, half of the planet is in perpetual darkness, while the other is constantly burned by the harsh sun. How people live there?
No
Don't
in
know.
between.
No. You either live on the side that is all day, or you live on the side that is all night.
Oh, that is a bummer.
Yeah, well, and I'm willing to guess inherently that the populace generally lives on the day side, and because it's maybe they live in the night, but then they like they use a way to like mimic sunlight. It didn't get that deep where I was looking, so I would love to know more, but I don't have
box
like
lights in the corner. Had them.
Yeah, I don't have like I don't have a otherwise great establishment on like the aspects of like where do they go and like what regions of this planet. You know, it's just kind of there. But surprisingly enough, it is a hive world, so that means there are a good number of people on this planet. And where did I go? Sorry. Its hive cities are characterized by pyramidal multi-level towers rising like mountains towards space. And it's why did I write it like this? Oh, because I just spelt it wrong. I wrote land servants or service. I wrote it's land service. I'm like, that's wrong. I read it now and I'm like,
yeah,
that's
the good
wrong.
Old land service.
Why did I write service? And I'm just like, because I'm an idiot, apparently. It's land surface is barely 1/10 the size of Earth.
Oh, okay. So very small.
He's a small boy.
That's Mercury like.
Yeah. And especially like it's the like livable land space, you know. Which to me though, what's funny about it is that would have to be a good portion, because I mean there at least has to be a portion of the half of the sun world, portion of the world that's like land, right? Like half of the planet is technically just land. And I mean, in 40k, the idea that like you couldn't live somewhere that has surface water is kind of moot, because Terra has no surface water anymore. And that's even leading up to the point of the Great Crusade. So like that got ruined through Old Night. So like, not really not really a problem in this realm. They find ways.
Gotcha. Okay.
And it doesn't always have to, and that's the thing is the populace doesn't always need the most drinkable water. It just has to be passably drinkable water. Don't worry if there's a little extra lead in there.
Honestly, I can relate.
Yeah. Yeah. Funny enough, in some regard, both of our cities.
Maybe this will just end up being a deeply relatable episode for us.
Yeah, maybe. But no, it was ruled by, so this has been ruled in the emperor's name by a known body called the Tetrarchs. And the rule of the Tetrarchs is harsh. They, you know, in general, hive cities and all that, they will have, you know, they often will have strict planetary governors, and, you know, a lot of times it's one governor, you know, but these are essentially a panel of autocratic rulers, and their word is absolute. And granted, this has stuck around because it has kind of been felt as a necessity due to the planet's scarce and strictly rationed resources. You know, if you get bogged down in committee one way or the other, it's, you know, the stuff is going to go bad and people are just going to start grabbing things. They fell to this idea that we have to, if we're going to survive, we cannot be lollygagging about, well, this place is getting blah, 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 and this is getting blah, 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 and my vote should say blah, blah, blah. They're like, fuck you. You're getting this. This is the percentage amount that is, adequate for your population. Deal with it.
You're getting this and you're going to like it.
Yeah. And that's the thing, right? It's like they're smart enough to not be like total, like, hey, I mean, like they may punishments may happen, but I just mean like, yeah, we're just deciding no because we feel like it. Mm-hmm. Like it's kind of part of the culture, right? Like they themselves are almost a very strict, militaristic, like people on this planet. And that moves up in through the Tetrarchs, where it's, they are pumping through like you're getting what you're getting because we have to make this work.
Yeah.
But again, that's not to be said that there aren't, negativities and blah, 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 It's always bad. This is 40k. All I can do is sensibly tell you why they've decided to go this route. Yeah. And why it hasn't like, they haven't been like rife with rebellions of like, no, but we need our food or we want more food. Or in the case of places like, like a place like Necromunda where it's like, but I want power now, but I want power now.
Mm-hmm.
You get
what about me, Bo?
Yeah. Be like, it's just the planet's so harsh and everything is so bad. It's just like, look, we may be harsh sometimes and we may use this as a deterrent to not do bad things. But like, damn, if we don't figure this shit out, we're going to die.
Yeah.
And thus, for getting into the Mordian Iron Guard then, which is a, very highly looked upon thing to do as young adults on the planet of Mordian. If you wish to be part of the guard, you must display great discipline. And so training consists of endless repetition. And this can just be, pressing uniforms, going through parade drills, bayonet practice, like the literal stabbing or the mounting of it. And then live fire exercises, which that part is probably like where it gets to more normal. The pressing of uniforms and parade drills is probably the part that other, guard regiments really wouldn't care about,
Sure. Yeah.
However, yes, they do, however, as part of their training, they essentially pride themselves on being some of the most dependable troops in the Imperium. A Mordian guardsman will follow orders to the letter. They will not, think in mystery. If you try to give them like weirdly, like if you try to give them orders that are obtuse, they're just going to follow it as you said it. So you can't be like coy with them,
Right.
Because they will act without a moment's hesitation. They, if you give them an order, they go do it. And, when they work, they are trained and work in like ranked fire lines. So, and they will shoot, fire, I said shoot and fire, the same thing. They will fire and reload in unison at order, at command.
Okay.
Like it is
very
almost
in sync.
Yeah. Very, very like, if you think about it, like revolutionary era, like old or like Victorian colonial, gun battles.
Very specific about their formations
right?
and their placements. Yep.
Yeah, where like, like if the French and the British were fighting in a war in like 1750, they just like went into an open field, would lean up in front of each other, fire, and then whoever lived would go to the back. Mm-hmm. And it would be next up. It's just whoever lived the most at the end won. Which honestly, just like thinking about the way we generally ever think of war now, insane way of being like, this is just how we do things. To just be like, we all agree, we're gonna meet in the middle, and we're just gonna shoot at each
settle
other.
this like gentlemen.
We're just gonna shoot at each other in big blocks and lines. Man, imagine being the guy in the back of the platoon. Just like,
oh
well,
yeah,
I hope it's going well
watch
at the
everybody
front.
else.
Yeah, I hope it's going well at the front. And you get there and there's just a pile. Well, looks like we're not doing well.
Oh, we surrendered 20 minutes ago? I only just found out.
Oh, we only got it now. Anyway, so the guard, the Mordians
to arrive on horseback.
The Mordians, you know, as well, I can still get you some pictures here. The thing, as I kind of alluded to in the intro, right? The Mordians are known for these, as I mentioned, their uniforms, as they have these very proper looking uniforms. You know, and they may appear, right? Like their bright colors, and you know, a lot of them will have various decorations.
Got the epaulets on. Yep.
Yeah, it may often mislead their enemies into thinking that they're maybe are just facing ceremonial troops, you know, or that like they're not gonna get dirty, you know, they're not gonna get down and dirty and hold their ground, you know, we can just bum rush them and go for it. However, you will, in your incorrect presumption to do so, you will attempt to advance in the face of the Iron Guards, and you will be faced with precise volleys and unyielding resolve. They will not move. They whether it be through their, you know, just the artillery or the lasgun fire, like they hold their ground, and it will just not stop. They will not stop shooting at you.
Oh, okay.
Otherwise, yes. So as part of that, they, you know, if they do have to withdraw, they don't break line still. So, you know, again, like if they're moving back, they're moving back as a unit, as a line, and just like it's kind of like just like being in a line and firing as you walk backwards. You know, like.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, they organize their support weapons into separate heavy weapons platoons, and then they also are known to make use of rattling snipers, and still will use sanctioned snipers on the battlefield. They don't have like a particular averseness to that, and thus they are great to have when you are on the defense, like, you know, kind of Iron Warsy, you know, or Iron Warsy or Imperial Fist, like, you know.
Yeah.
Otherwise, yeah, due to their reputation for being like just to a T and following orders directly without hesitation, obviously for general Imperial commanders, very popular group to have. Like, oh, yeah, I'm not gonna get back chat from some general.
Perfect. Sign me up.
Awesome. Can't wait. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be the easiest, you know, mission of my life. Which we'll get to in a minute, but thus that made them inherently good candidates for parts of the Indominus Crusade, especially with Cadia, you know, having to do a lot of recovery. The Mordians made great options for, you know, having more regiments, you know, giving Cadia exploded.
Should I laugh at that?
I do.
Is that
I do. Yeah. Like I like having a few true Imperial L's, not empiric Imperial W's. Like I want some true Imperial L's every now and then, because, you know, to me, it makes the W's then more worthwhile, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I
So
get you.
I like when there's a pure L, even though I know they made like New Cadia or whatever. But like, look, if you talk about that to any Guard fan, especially, like they're gonna tell you like, man, it's not the same. It's not the same. So I know some CSM fans get a little upset the fact that there's a new Cadia. They're just like, well, we blew up Cadia, but then they made a new Cadia. Yes, but they feel it, and that's what matters.
Yeah, totally.
Anyway, their preferred special weapon is a grenade launcher, but the las cannon is their principal heavy weapon. Obviously, the primary weapon of generalness is going to be the las gun. That's just kind of a given though for every Guard regiment. Maybe an auto gun technically could be the alternative for some other regiments that are out there, but pretty much like you could always default like main weapon will be the las gun. The question will always be like, what do they like as their main special weapon, and then what is their main heavy weapon? For them, it's grenade launcher, las cannon. Which las cannon basically being a Spartan laser. You can imagine it's pretty nice to have. It's pretty effective.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And then otherwise,
am I crazy to ask if those had ammunition, or did they run off like a crystal or something?
I always forget. The las gun, I know it essentially operates off of like a battery pack. I need a better one than that. It's like effective. It is effectively a, like, the reason the las gun is kind of looked at as like in some regards like a what should be like a perfect weapon is because of the fact that it does basically have unlimited ammo. The main things that come like that it I guess here let me start off here. So it has a power pack, and whether or not it's a large power pack or a small power pack, it could almost effectively have, like you could charge it with the power pack. You could use it, charge it, and then use it again, right? It's not like it's specifically like burning a thing, obviously though that power pack could die or whatever, right? So, but they do have to, reload or recharge that power pack. And some of them could go from 80 to 150 shots. But like it's kind of that realm of like, through this effectively battery pack, they're able to spin up and essentially just produce light at such a speed that you are just walloping somebody with it.
Yeah, I get you.
And then the las cannon is just, again, a bigger version of that. Obviously the las gun operates in the similar fault that most laser-based weapons in sci-fi fantasy work, which is that there's not much to ever point to where it's like you are literally where you could ever truly be shooting a laser beam as we know it. But their explanation for it is more that that the actual ammunition, or like I guess you could say the projectile, is just a beam of focused light that is such a high amount of energy that essentially the surface area of a target would just be like vaporize and emit a small explosion upon impact.
It's so concentrated, focused that it.
Yeah, it's not like plasma, and it's not like working off of a crystal. It's essentially just light is being generated through mechanisms in the gun, and then it focuses and directs that out the barrel. And the battery pack just powers that whole thing, which is why that can die and run out of charge. But again, you could just charge it again.
Gotcha.
The charging thing is the thing that I've always been led to believe is the case. Someone could tell me that they don't recharge, and I could understand that, but I'd always believed that that was the case, because that was kind of always the thing, is that, like, in a perfect world, technically the guard could never run out of ammo of the las guns specifically.
Sure.
The problem is that doesn't mean that as a regiment you could run out of ammo, because let's be real, anything that's left in the world of 40k, if all you have is a las gun, you're fucked. You will die. So that's why, like, in something like Tithes, where there's the episode where the guard comes to like people on the planet think they're coming to give them ammunition, where they're actually there to take it. The ammunition's not like, oh, here's some new las pistol cartridges and las gun cartridges. No, it's like the heavy munition, missiles, stuff for bolters, stuff for, for big mounted guns, when you're especially fighting orcs, is pretty important to have. Which is why then, thus, for the Mordians, they're very known and renowned for utilizing precise artillery. And I don't know it exactly, because I'm not a guard player, but I think that I had like some of the things to do with the new, recently there was a regiment that came out for Grotmas this last year that's meant to reflect the Mordian, like it's like the Mordian detachment. And I think like artillery plays a role in that. The main things I know about it is that it was apparently very strong and like very attractive to players. But I couldn't tell you much more about it, because again, I'm just not a guard player, so I don't know.
Yeah.
But otherwise, let's gotta get into some renowned regiments here. So the 33rd Mordian Iron Guard, alongside the 91st, they made up the defense of a city-sized Promethium refinery on the planet of Phrixus against the Tyranid Splinter Fleet. So they had held out for months, and then eventually the 91st got wiped out by a cataclysmic explosion caused by a dying Tyranid Bio-Titan. Like, have you played that mission in Space Marine 2?
Yes.
Yeah, and like, yep. Yeah, it's like funny, because it is like, I mean, granted, there are many Bio-Titans that technically exist, but like the idea of it just like, like, yeah, that thing that you defeat, you have to use an orbital laser to defeat. We're just gonna ignore the fact that that thing is probably going to fucking explode.
Just don't
and
worry
many will
about
die.
it. Yeah.
I mean, in the case of the mission, there was some sense to the fact that like that planet was given up upon. They were just kind of trying to damage.
They were already calling it a lost cause.
Yeah, they were just trying to damage the hive mind at that point. But those of the 33rd that then survived the explosion eventually were found along the perimeter, and they were holding the line against the Tyranid swarms until their ammunition ran dry and they were wiped out. Because, you can only fire so much within a horde of Tyranids.
Right. Totally.
Otherwise, here's the funny thing. I tried looking at like various notable regiments, or, like infantry or like tank divisions and all that. So many of them are just like, and then they all died. Which is a guard thing, I know. That's just kind of a thing that happens to guardsmen in stories, but it's just funny to me. So I think I had if I remember, yeah, I found one where at least they stayed successful, which was the Mordian Third, which was one of the most decorated, celebrated Iron Guard regiments. They took part of the defense of Hive Barbarossa against an orc Wa. And this was during the Battle of the Marble Garden.
Marble Gardens.
Yeah, the Knicks play
Sonic?
there sometimes. I like how we went two different directions on that.
It absolutely did. Yep. Two trains passing in the night.
However, to this day, they were able to push the Wog out. To this day, the deeper levels of the Hive are swept by armed troops to ensure that the orcs never gain enough strength to muster again. Then that one was your classic. They push back. They got to the war boss. They killed the war boss. The orcs splintered out. They tried to root them out as much as possible, but you can never fully get rid of orcs. So that's why you need to do these sweeps to get rid of them just as they essentially spawn, right? You got to spawn camp the orcs.
Yeah.
But like there are other ones that were like semi-interesting. They just didn't have they didn't have stories that I felt like I wanted to get to, or again, just didn't end in and then they all died, but like one good example is they have a group with, there's the Third Heavy Tank Company, which is literally just like a Mordian tank company, group that is just all right, we like tanks, so we're just going to grab the two biggest tanks in the Imperium in specifically a Mars pattern Shadow Sword known as Alpha 3, and then have a mix of Bane Blades, Shadow Swords, and Storm Blades, all plural.
Mm-hmm.
These tanks the size of a small apartment building are used in multitudes by the Third Heavy Tank Company. So they do not hide from their armored or desire for armor,
Yeah, totally.
But otherwise, they just have plenty of other armored units. And then it was kind of similar for some of the characters. I was trying to look at who's this and who's that. There was this one guy. I'm sorry, I'm laughing. My wife is working on a video project and she's fast forwarding it, and the program she uses does the tape speed up sound. If you use Premiere and you fast forward, eventually it drops audio. It doesn't.
Yeah.
So when I was listening to it, it straight up sounded like an Animal Crossing character.
It's just
it sounded like but yeah, there was for example, I really thought about getting into this General Luthor Dvorgin, who Dvorgin, I don't know, who is the
I've
commander
been getting
of
into Luther Dvorgin lately. Sips coffee.
He was the general of the 84th Mordian Guard, and it was he took part. He was essentially with Imperial forces that went to, for him, it was they went to a shrine world, and they essentially just needed to prevent chaos from claiming the city. And then when the Indomitus Crusade had to arrive. When it arrived, they won that battle, but then during a funeral procession afterward, he died. Because there was a revolt during the parade. Right? Or during the funeral procession, there was a revolt.
Okay.
So it's that's it. There's nothing else about it. So I wanted to get to a fun one, because not often can you talk about a sergeant for an Imperial Guard unit who's now known as Saint Magdakesh. Originally serving as sergeant in the Mordian 84th Regiment, she was a veteran of the Battle of Gathalamor during the Indomitus Crusade. Within this, she would end up being presumed dead during the battle, but afterward miraculously reappeared and limped her way back to camp, having fought her way through demons in a pit of bones.
Metal.
Yeah, I was like, okay, that's about as metal as it sounds.
Mm-hmm.
This was labeled as a miracle, and that would not be the thing that distinctly led to her claim or her title of sainthood. As even though she took part in the next battle of that confrontation and seemingly miraculously survived, though not as metal, the Mordian 84th was later requisitioned by Inquisitor Rostov in the hunt for the Hand of Abaddon. By the way, this all technically is spoilers for a relatively recent Dawn of Fire book, so just be aware. Anyway, the Rostov and the Mordians were being accompanied by Sister of Silence, Serenial, I think I'm saying this right, were confronted by a Hand of the Archon, dubbed the Scion of Plagues.
Oh, they weren't the Scion of Blueberries or the Scion of Pretty Flowers or...
No, and granted, I would imagine
the Scion of Steam Deck vent smells, like nothing like that. No.
Well, and I imagine a lot of the members of the Hand of Abaddon, I have to imagine there's like one person within that grouping that's going to be all like, I'm the Hand of Korn, I'm the Hand of Nurgle, I'm the Hand of Slaanesh, blah, 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 blah. You know, like, so, but yes, we got the Scion of Plagues, which you could only guess who his homeboy is. So during the confrontation, as Kesh is about to be struck down, she is suddenly overcome by the light of the Emperor. Transformed into a living saint, she emitted a wave of light that disintegrated the Scions of Plague and the rest of the Chaos Horde. It was in the aftermath of this miracle that Kesh would be held by Rostov, which... it's one of those things where it's like, damn, this really became a blessing and a curse in a way. And rogue trader Katla Helvinter aboard their vessel, the Worm Slayer Queen, and is consistently watched over by Serenial, the Sister of Silence, who thus they have declared the reluctant guardsmen as having been chosen by the Emperor. And so realistically what that ends up meaning is that, because that's, you know, where that's the last we've seen from her story, is essentially that leaving. But often with living saints, what ends up being the case, kind of like what we talked about with like Swordlight in the Elemental Council, where they're not often, you know, they're not just like, hey, go do whatever you want, you know, or go, you know, your menial tasks are worthless now. You have, you know, you do good for us by being seen, you know. But unlike with Swordlight, the Imperium would definitely be like, we want you to be seen in battle. Get going. But they would want to, they'd do it, you know, it'd be like a tough battle, a battle where maybe they think the morale might be, you know, tough to keep up. The odds may be stacked against them. Put a living saint out there. Bam. Some big morale. I mean, Saint Celestine is kind of a good example of that. She literally will appear in battles where it seems the most dire. Like when they are losing.
Yeah. Picking the appropriate timing.
Yeah.
For when to be there. Yeah.
which, you know, in Celestine's case, it's usually essentially that she, you know, she is around, you know, the thing is she's around until she dies. And usually the way it works is that like she shows up, like in Cadia, for example, where it's like she shows up and then she does her stuff, and then, you know, she'll, you know, go out in some type of martyrdom. So, you know, or just like a glorious duel with, you know, someone like she'd no hesitation 1v1 Abaddon, even though Abaddon probably might win. She would do it. You know, because she's basically a demon of the Emperor when you think about it from a technical standpoint.
When you really think about it.
But that's the other thing too, is that like the phrase demon is really used for just essentially any entity that is like essentially any warp entity, right? And whether or not then you take to some of the arguments like, is the Emperor quote unquote chaos god now, you know, or is he an order god, you know, like, yeah, I don't know. But given that she is a living saint, not unlike Celestine, she is going to have a little bit more, like, then that's kind of where they put the reluctantly part. Like, she is going to unfortunately have a little bit more of a, like, a face position rather than a go out in every, you know, with all of your men type position. But other than that, that is much of the basics of the Mordian Iron Guard from a tabletop perspective. You know, they had models, and I say had because they're very old. They're very old.
It's another one of those where they haven't really gotten like a refresh.
No.
Because yes.
They effectively felt that, because GW clearly felt that Cadians kind of really were going to be the main, like, yes, this is kind of going to be our standard, and then we will, you know, we'll flush in some units, you know, around that, you know. But like, I mean, the models themselves are pretty gosh dang old. They're not as bad as the classic Catachans, but they're pretty aged looking. Which I know some people look at as a charm, but
there's a charming element to them, but they also, this is one of those where like I look at it, if I was like looking at it from a glance, I may not even immediately be able to tell you that they were 40k models as much as like traditional, like they're very real world esque. I think the weaponry is kind of the main thing that would give it away otherwise.
Yeah, I think the only one that
the Mordian suits, you know, the Mordian uniform is so familiar to what we know.
Yeah, I mean, like,
very
other
marine
than like
coded.
So yeah, I was gonna say, other than some of the memories, you would think like this maybe would be like models for like a very old school, but then like you get models like this one where like the guy is holding a magazine the size of his torso, you know, and you're like, oh okay,
yeah.
Oh okay, this is probably 40k.
No, yeah. When you take a real look at it, especially those weapons, and it's like, okay, now I can see how this is.
I see where it
a little
fits.
more standout.
But that was the thing too, was part of this stems from, you know, back in the day, you know, they would, which is why like I always go back and forth on like the, you know, the way people feel like, you know, so many things lost representation or whatever, because like, you know, technically, like there was an army for everything back in the day. When I was doing research for a future episode, you know, like I went to the Wayback Machine and I looked at the Forge World website from like, I think I went to like 2003. And like that was just like there were so many like army like labels for like options and stuff for like finding units and finding models. And I'm like, that's like, can you imagine if they had a bunch of rules and stuff for every one of those model types and factions now? Like, honestly, it would kind of be overwhelming if you're going to try to get into the game, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I'm
so
a guy,
much to deal with at once. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, like, I'm a guy that kind of appreciates a game knowing when to kind of be like, all right, we need to whittle the options down a bit, you know? like when Pokemon went out with the classic having every Pokemon in every game in Gen 8.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I was actually very much in favor of that. It was of the, it was an unpopular opinion and kind of still is, but I felt like if I was ever going to have any semblance of playing a Pokemon game and actually finishing a Pokedex, I was never going to do that if it involved catching like, I think at Gen 8, it was like 960 or 70 Pokemon.
Mm-hmm.
Like I just wasn't doing it. It wasn't going to do it.
I think it's one of those things that's really good to give people the option.
Mm-hmm.
To set it up in a way that the people that want to go for that can go for it, and then everyone else otherwise. It's intuitive. It's been made intuitive for them to not necessarily have to go that route if they don't want to.
Yes. And that's the thing to me, which is that I think the thing that GW doesn't do, and I think the middle ground to achieve that specifically is to just, like with the Krieg, or not even like with the Krieg, but like, like when they released the Krieg, and if they released other units, to instead of making them a specific data sheet, just label them as, like the basic Imperial Guard troop box, but Mordian, right? Or basic Imperial Guard troop box, but Vostroyan Firstborn, or Krieg or whatever. Like, when they came out with the Krieg refresh, they had come out with specific Krieg data sheets, which for some I think is okay. Like the Riders, I think was good to make its own data sheet, but like, the unit that was basically could have just been 10 soldiers in a box. You could have just said like, those apply to the Imperial Guard, whatever battle line unit data sheet, right? That to me is, I think, what like they should do in these scenarios, right? To me, like personally, where it's just like, look, we're going to make these models. They're going to look like Mordians, but this data sheet is literally just, they go to this blank, Mordian Guard unit, or they go like this one goes to the standard Imperial Guard heavy weapons unit, It's kind of like how like with Space Marines that you can just get head swaps, right? Or like, with some of the kits, like what they just released with the Red Corsairs, how they have special Red Corsair specific bits that you could get in the box, the launch box, and now the combat patrol, but they still are just Chaos Space Marine Legionnaires, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think if they do that route, that works, right? Create a way where it's maybe just like, here's the Mordian upgrade screw, or just here's a box of Mordians, but they coincide to this box or this data sheet that already exists. Because the number one thing that GW has to do is technically they can come out with, I think, a model. No. Oh, shoot. It's one or the other. Essentially, there has to be legally, GW has to have a link from a datasheet to a model. The thing I can't remember is if, as far as I know, as long as the model exists, it has to have a datasheet it can connect to. But the thing that I can't remember is if it maybe had to be specific, which is why they don't do that anymore. But GW got sued once because they used to just make models, right? Like they just make models. They wouldn't always pertain to a data sheet. Well, someone got pissed about that. They filed a lawsuit and they won.
Oh.
So now that's why GW always makes sure that when they release a model, there's either a game or a data sheet it can point to.
Sure.
Which is why I think they have tough times now making all these random models because they need something to attach it to, but they don't always want to introduce a bunch of new data sheets and like clog the system and maybe potentially screw up the whole, like, you know, all like the meta, you know, and like completely break the game, especially for tournament players. So if that's the case, I could get that, but I would hope and would think that they could just be like, here's this model. It is attached to this data sheet. It's just because it's the same weapons. It's the same everything. They just look like Mordians, right? That would be my hope of what they should hopefully be able to do. And I think that would make it better so that they could both be played. People could have the option for the extra stuff, but it not bog the game down.
Yeah.
Other than that, though, that's pretty much all I got on the Mordians.
Cool. Yeah, cool little faction, cool little regiment.
Yeah. I mean, they always kind of hit, I think, in that, like, always appearing very, like I think Bricky makes a joke about it in his, like, first, like, his initial, like, you know, every faction in Warhammer 40k explained video. Like, he makes a joke, like, you know, you could be the Mordian Iron Guard, and you're more concerned about how polished your shoes are versus your.
I keep coming back to the epaulettes, man. That's what does it for me. The boots are all right, but it's the epaulettes that do it for me.
Right, which, you know, to be fair, they probably care about just as much. But that is the thing, is that that presumption is always a disservice to the Mordians, who, while they care about those things, we're not wrong. They are going to, you know, press their uniform.
They're still fighting.
Shine their shoes. They will absolutely kick your ass.
Yeah, for sure.
And let's be frank, you know, you compare a Mordian to a Cadian, like uniform wise, like the person that's going into war in 40k and is like, I don't need your stinking flak armor. I'm just going in with my fancy coat and a las gun. I'm gonna respect that guy a hell of a lot more. I may expect him to die faster, but I respect it more.
Mm-hmm.
That man said, no, I fear nothing. I'm going into battle with my coat and I'll be happy for it. But any questions about the Mordians?
No. I think I have a good understanding of them now.
Yeah, all right. Well, that'll hold us off for this week. You know, I had kind of hoped to look at, and I still may find a way, but to look at like the custom unit rules for 40k. I thought that would like be a fun episode for us to like build characters to use in the tabletop, you know. But like, I couldn't really find a lot of good online stuff for how to build that character. Now it's kind of like, I don't know like how we would necessarily build that together, because I feel like you still probably need some realm of, even though it's for casual games only, it's like still feel like you'd probably need a little bit of extra game knowledge. And you know, we haven't played the game in a very long time. That one time that it was on the channels.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, I'm not sure it's worth pushing that. So this really worked nicely for kind of just a quick topic that I could kind of squeeze out and we can kind of just be like in and out, but no burgers. But otherwise, yeah. So we will. What's funny is this kind of is taking the place of our standard Gundam episode. But yeah. So next week, I can say for sure we are getting into. We will continue in our world of 40k, but I'll tell you what, we're getting close to Adepticon, and I am excited.
Heck yeah, should be. It'll be a blast.
Yeah, so because I can't wait to see what they do for 11th edition. Just kind of learn like how are they gonna shift from 10th edition? Because the internet really loves to like bemoan 10th edition, and there are things that that were decisions that I think weren't good decisions, but like. Generally, I feel like it has been the most accessible 40k has been, which to me is always a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm kind of like that. I'm not, I think of it this way. Like I think of it like a good reset period where it's like, all right, now like a bunch of people are into playing 40k, right? Myself included. I'm not just a lore guy anymore. Now I actually like to play the game. So it's like, okay. Now throw the extra stuff back in. But like now that there's like this new baseline, right? Like let's throw some stuff in. Otherwise, there's probably going to be other announcements. Hopefully maybe we can see some nifty models. That'll definitely be though a post Adepticon episode.
Yeah, kind of a wrap up, a recap of it,
which we will be able to do actually during it, because I on the plus side will not actually like we'll have our recording day will be unaffected during that weekend.
Gotcha.
So we'll be good. But otherwise, other than the inside baseball talk, don't have a preview for next week. You'll just kind of have to come by and see what it is. Once
you have no choice but
thumbnail.
to subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for the next episode.
Yeah,
nothing else you can do about it. You have to do
it. You have to do it. Whether it be hobby stuff, lore stuff, we got it all down here at the Heretic Hammer 40k Emporium.
And we'll throw our shiny boots at you if you don't. So, keep that in mind.
All right. See you guys next week.
Goodbye.